Happy spring! We are now on the first of the month. Can you believe it? Maybe not the first exactly, but we're in the beginning of March. And with that, we are marching into spring, hence the name of the show. And when I think about spring, I think about things that are growing. I think about planting season. I think about Easter. I think about a lot of things. A lot of things spring to mind. Okay, I'll stop with the puns. A lot of things come to mind when it is spring. And my guest today comes to mind when it is spring. My guest today made the hard shift of transitioning from corporate America, where she was incredibly successful, into a place where she was doing holistic home care, health care, growing of plants and herbs. She left what was a sure thing by the world standards, and that's the operative word there, the world standards, and she went into uplifting the world's vibration. And by doing so, she created a whole new life and inroads for herself and those that she loved and the clients that she coaches. I am so happy to have Deborah here with us today to teach us about her hard-earned knowledge about our earth and all things springing. Okay? So Deborah, welcome to Evolve.
Hi, Monette. It's an honor to be here today. And as you said, what a great time of year. In spring, everything is fresh and new, and not just around us in life and plant life, but we also have a new year that we're in the beginning of. In these first few months, if we made a commitment to transform our lives and have new beginnings, what a wonderful time to remember that, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so I'm always curious as to how we come to our story. And so I wonder for you, how long have you had this connection with the earth? I talked about you transitioning out of corporate America, but how did you know? Because we all have different callings. How did you know that for you, it was about earth things and being earthbound?
Well, it's funny you say that because when I sat back and answered to myself, how did I get back to this place? As a young girl, I remember going in the woods next to our house in New Jersey, and at the end of the woods, right at the edge, was this beautiful wild blueberry field. And every spring, my brothers and sisters and I would carry our buckets and tromp to the trail we made through the woods because we loved playing. In the 70s, it was a time when you grew up and you really had fun and you were outdoors and did a lot of things that were not electronic as our children do today.
Right.
So with that said, we carried the buckets of blueberries, ate half of them along the way. But during that season, some of our fondest memories were going through the woods, bringing back the blueberries, and then helping our parents make those blueberry tarts and muffins and pies, and we watched them cook it and can it and made jelly and jams, and we had blueberries last all year long. And so it was one of the fondest times of my life, and I am so honored that spirit and vibration has reconnected me back to those memories. So that's where it started. I was a 70s kid, right?
Absolutely. And in the 70s, like you said, the hands were in the earth and you really knew, you understood where your food came from. It's interesting to me, having worked with kids in culinary programs, that a lot of people have zero idea about not only butchering and planting and picking and growing, but they just think like, oh, this chicken comes from the package at the supermarket, and they're not really in touch with their food. And I think that that's a tragedy, because if you're not in touch with your food, you don't really understand its worth and how to get good and proper things into your body and into your system. So I know that you are a Taurus, so I'm not surprised at all that you really are about this earth work, because Taurus is an earth sign. But how, as an adult, did you begin to reincorporate the earth and earth medicine back into your life?
Funny you said that, and it's intuitive that you even mentioned about our kids today. So many times I visit classrooms and I go to even high schools, not just elementary schools, and talk to kids about food and its value and where it comes from. And you're right, Mo, so many of the kids think it's at the grocery store. They just never had that hands-on experience. So, as healers, it's our job to make a change there. And for me, as an adult, I was in corporate America, and after I left corporate America, I knew I had to serve people. So I said, you know what? Let me go into RN school. And so I was 12 credits away from entering RN school. And one of the best experiences I can share with you is I had an anatomy and physiology and a biology teacher who gave us not only a hands-on class, but she would bring in fruit and she would bring in her Vitamix, and we would make all kinds of smoothies, and we got to sample what it was like to live more holistic. And she was a great example to all of us in that classroom, and she made an impact on me. And when I told her I was getting ready to enter RN school, she advised me to research holistic health. She said, did you know, Dad, with what's inside your heart and your attraction to earth and to good, clean food and to helping people with their bodies through food, there's actually a great need for healers out here that teach holistic health, that teach medicine through food. And she said, go home tonight before you finish your paperwork for RN school. Go home tonight and just do yourself a favor and look up a holistic health practitioner. I went home that night. I was up, I remember, till 5 in the morning. I couldn't sleep. I was so excited. And I found this amazing school that I could do online and get my degree. In Arizona, it was called the Southwest Institute of Healing Arts. And it's exactly what God intended for me. And I found my home. And then after I got my degree, during that whole process, I learned about exactly that, how food and herbs and all the things that are on the earth were created to heal us and give us balance in our body, in mind, body, and spirit. And so it was absolutely my message from the angels. And I appreciate those teachers so much, because without that direction, I may have never found my purpose.
And that's the beauty of an amazing teacher. And it just makes me grateful for all the beautiful people that have spoken into my life. And so, listeners, thank them in your heart if you don't get to thank them in person, because we do have angels drop people in our life, and sometimes they come right in the form of a teacher. So, Deborah, you followed through. You go and you get your degree. What is your degree in from this university?
My degree is in transformational psychology. So what does that mean? Well, transformational, meaning we're helping people as a life coach tap into what they think their purpose is. You know, every one of us are so uniquely and beautifully created. And with each one of our DNA, next to that DNA that I know is in the book of life is our purpose. You know, we're all created for a reason. Our spirit lives in this body and uses this body to fulfill that purpose. And so while we're in this temporary temple, if we never discover our purpose, it's quite sad that we don't know how to move forward and really have happiness. And so when I say that to you, it's because of that reason. When you get to that point where you're transforming your life, sometimes you don't know where to begin, or you have fear, or you have unforgiveness, or you have some traumatic events that could have happened in your life. It's very common with our military men and women returning with post-traumatic stress disorder, even young children that may have had any kind of molestation or any kind of trauma in their lives, and they carried it into adulthood. These are the things that can stop any of us from truly finding our purpose. So transformational psychology helps each one of us tap into our psyche and try to discover within us what already was put there from our creation.
And I know that you have a minor in something to do with farming. What is that?
Absolutely. It's urban farming as well as nutrition coaching. And as a nutritionalist and an urban farmer, I learned the value of what's in the food, you know, nutritionally dense foods versus processed, high-calorie, non-nutrition foods, and what kind of foods support the body and give us a balance in mind, body, and spirit, and then foods that actually help create toxins and promote us to have inflammation leading to disease. And so that's what it's about. It's about learning that gift of food and appreciating that gift of food when you cook your meals and then purposefully eating that meal and giving the gratefulness and the thankfulness for what's here on the earth. Because when you don't eat with purpose, these are the things that can lead to food disorders.
Absolutely. And so when you're dealing with this degree, I imagine you're learning a little bit of everything from permaculture to grow boxes to aquaponics.
Absolutely, all of it. And, I just wanted to touch something when it comes to the word Ayurveda. Ayurveda is something that's really important for people to understand in the United States, because Western medicine, this is the only country that experiences a kind of health system that does not use the earth per se. So for thousands of years, there's been a medicine. It's a Hindu practice, again, for thousands of years in India and in the Asians, of Ayurveda. And Ayurveda is made up of two Sanskrit words, which means Aryu means life, and Veda, which means the knowledge of.
Okay, wait.
So
Let's stop you there just because I think that's an important thing. So you said Aryu means life and Veda means the knowledge of.
Absolutely. So Ayurveda, A-Y-U, that means life. And then Veda is the knowledge of. So when you put it together, the knowledge of life is actually right here on earth through food. Everything that's able to sustain us as a human race and heal our bodies is here. So not only does it mean living in tune with nature, but it also means learning what foods can actually promote balance in mind, body, and spirit. So that's what transformational psychology is. It's not just the psyche part, but it's learning how to balance mind, body, and spirit, and using what God created on the earth to allow us to have that.
Absolutely, guys. So now you guys know a little bit about Ayurveda. Now, I'd heard that word and used it, and I have a Ayurveda book for dummies at home from that For Dummies series. I had no idea that it meant the knowledge of life, right?
Yep, and living in tune with nature is what it's all about.
Living in tune with nature, the knowledge of life. And so you get into this work, and I have to ask you if there was any other circumstance that led you into wanting to find a way to heal your body through food, because you just talked about that and the inflammation that can be as a result, which I have experienced and understand, and I'm learning. The older I get, your body really starts to communicate with you very clearly. You don't get away with what you used to. So what made you, in regards to your body, want to get into this work, Deborah?
I'm glad you asked that, Mo. I, too, was a product of an eating disorder. So as a teenager through adolescence, I went from being an average-sized young girl to being obese after I had my children in my 20s. So at the highest point, I was at about 340 pounds. And as a 39-year-old woman, I was pre-diabetic. My body hurt. My joints hurt. And I knew that I was turning to food for comfort. And it came from the different things I went through in my life. And for me, I went through a childhood molestation and never actually dealt with it. And so I used food to fill in those feelings of inadequacy that I never dealt with. I thought I tucked them away. So in 1997, over 300 pounds, I went and had a gastric bypass surgery for weight loss.
Okay.
So during that process of getting approved, you meet with different nutritionalists, and you deal with the psychology of why you use food for comfort. And it was then that I learned that I was someone that walked around with a food disorder. I grew up in a family where food was celebrated. My father was a product of World War II, and he had told us that back then, for a span of 5 to 10 years, there was no food. All there was potatoes, bread, and lard. So there was no meat, no fruit, no vegetables. And when my father had a family, his joy was in inviting us to eat a second plate.